Hello, investors. This is Todd Thomas, Associate Portfolio Manager with Revere Asset Management, coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida. Today is Sunday, May 25th, 2025. The time is 1:45 p.m., and I'm here to bring you the Revere Roundup Weekend Walkthrough. On the trend gauge, we have three green up arrows. Last week, the leaders continued to act constructively, although many pulled back modestly. The action was constructive. Both indexes are firmly above the short-term 21 EMA and the 50-day simple moving average. We do have a yellow neutral arrow on the long term. Even though both indexes are above the 200-day moving average, we did test the 200-day moving average on the S&P on Friday. However, there are still indexes, especially small and mid-cap indexes, which are below the 200-day moving average, showing weakness. Last week's highlights. Monday, we started with a 1% gap down open in reaction to the previous Friday night's Moody's downgrade of the U.S. debt. Yet we ended up reversing and closing slightly positive on the day to end with 6 straight up sessions for the S&P 500. On Tuesday, we had a mild distribution stalling type day as we ended the 6-day winning streak with yields climbing going into Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, both the S&P and the NASDAQ logged distribution days as the 10-year yield spiked to their highest level since February 12th after a weak 20-year bond auction resulted in higher yields than expected. Japan also had a weak 20-year bond auction. On Thursday, the House passed President Trump's tax bill, which is now off to the Senate, and there'll likely be some adjustments to the House version. Friday was a big morning, where Trump initially started the day off saying that iPhones will face a 25% tariff if not manufactured in the U.S. He also threatened the EU with 50% tariffs due to lack of progress in trade negotiations. NASDAQ logged its second distribution day, and the S&P found support on the 200-day moving average. Also on Friday, Trump, on the positive side, signed a series of executive orders invoking emergency powers and COVID war-era statutes to overhaul and accelerate the U.S. nuclear energy sector with a focus on uranium mining, uranium enrichment, and the deployment of advanced nuclear reactors. Going on to some slides on the bond market. Found an interesting slide, and it's notable that Microsoft's spread to U.S. Treasuries is now at the lowest level in history and currently only 20 basis points higher than the 30-year Treasury. Also, U.S. Treasury interest payments on the deficit and debt are climbing, approaching $1 trillion. Right now, interest payments on the deficit and debt are as high, if not higher, than Social Security, or not Social Security, I'm sorry, Medicare, Medicaid, and defense spending. And we're expected to approach Social Security also by 2038, I believe. Okay, on the stock front for the week, most everything was slightly down. Apple was a notable weak name, down 7.5% on the Trump tariff threats of 25% tariffs. The semiconductors were down across the board also. Intuit in the software application side was positive 7% on earnings. Tesla down slightly, Google up as they had an investors conference and some new announcements in the AI front. Overall, slightly red across the board. GEV a standout, up 8.4% on Trump's nuclear executive orders. And also you can see the ETFs were down on the week, with semiconductors a little bit weaker than most. Gold a standout, the VIX was up 13% as well. Silver and Bitcoin were up on the week. However, earlier today, Bitcoin did fall back below its all-time highs, which it made new all-time highs on Thursday, but then currently he's trading around 106,000. We're coming into the end of earnings season this week with some notable names. Okta will be reporting on Tuesday, as well as NVDA on Wednesday night. Nutanix is also out on Wednesday. Salesforce.com, Elf, several retail names, Abercrombie and Fitch. Both these names have been weak. Hewlett Packard, Futu Holdings from China, Zscaler, one we'll be watching in the security area. Ulta Beauty also, Gap, Dell, and Costco. And again, here's the earnings reports by day if you'd like to see those. Costco out on Thursday, as well as Marvell. Going into the fear and greed and investor sentiment, we have gotten into greed territory. Now, this does not mean we're at a high. We can stay this elevated for weeks or months, and we're below the extreme greed level, but things are definitely heating up a little bit and have been heating up. The AAII, this is the individual investors. We can see we went from several weeks where we were in the 59 over 60% bearish camp to now down to 36% and 37% in bullish from only 20%. And AAIM, this is the professional institutional investors are now at 80% exposure from as low as 35% in mid-April. So a big spike there from May 7th, 14th, and the 21st. And finally, into the economic numbers, big week of starting off with durable orders, home price index, consumer confidence, Federal Open Market Committee minutes on Wednesday will be released, as well as the big retail sales numbers and the PCE price, which is the coveted Fed inflation gauge. And then finally on Friday as well, the University of Michigan consumer sentiment. So big week. We might have some notable swings in the bond market with some of these releases. Now going on to the charts. The S&P 500 was down 2.6% on the week. We can see that Friday on the Trump tariff announcements, we did test the 200-day moving average. Look at a 60-minute chart. We did gap down, opened at the lows. Let me go into a 5-minute chart. We opened right at the lows, climbed, almost closed the gap on the day, but then sold off a little bit into the close. So lighter volume on the week, needed digestion after a strong bounce off the lows and a pullback and a successful test of the 200-day moving average. NASDAQ did not get to the 200-day moving average, faring a little bit better, right on the 30-week moving average and above all the other long-term weekly moving averages. Q's also down 2.3% on a little bit of a pickup in volume, but still well above the 50 and the 200-day moving average, below the 8 EMA, but continues to stay above all of the long weekly term moving averages. RSP down 3%, equal weight down 2.7%. Mid-caps failed at the 40-week moving average, as well as the 200-day after briefly getting above it last week, got rejected and hit back down. So again, in this particular rally, the market is favoring large cap stocks, not small and mid cap stocks. Russell's down 3.4% on the week. VIX was up 29% at 22 after peaking at 25 and change on Friday. Was able to pull back down, but still back above 20 again. US dollar got hit by 2% on the week. Although it's been down in this area, this is the lowest close that the dollar has seen, I believe, since 2022. Again, we did get below it, but we closed above it. But this is the weakest close for the dollar in several years. The 30-year Treasury yield, after hitting the highest level since October of 2023, backed off a little bit, but still up 2.6% on the week to 5.03, over 5%. And the 10-year up at 4.509%. Did back off on the week, but closed up 1.53%. Bitcoin closed, IBIT closed, backed off a little bit from the pivot after a breakout attempt. Semiconductor index down 5%. Gold regained 5.27% and is very close to its all-time highs. Silver up 3.9% on the week. And gold miners, the big standout, up 9.07%. Incidentally, there are a lot of gold stocks that look good. They are potentially actionable. Because there are so many names in the leadership area, I did not put gold stocks on the watch list, but you're free to go and look through them. There's many good-looking gold stocks. The watch list is fairly large already, and I've tried to cut it back. Europe, despite the Trump tariffs, still flat on the week, which is a good sign. It was able to gain support. So in general, the markets pretty much blew off Trump's tariffs as just a negotiating tool on the week. And the Mag Hill round, Magnificent 7, down 2.4%. And we'll go into the Mag 7. Tesla took a break after reclaiming its moving averages, including the 40-week, the 20-week, 10-week, as well as the 200-day moving average, solidly above that, and building a nice little flag formation here as Elon Musk is back in full force with latest reports that he is now sleeping on the floor in the office, and he is serious about getting the robotaxi launch in Texas going, as well as the humanoid robots. Microsoft down slightly on the week on lighter volume. Amazon down 2.2% on the week. And NVIDIA down 3% on the week. Again, consolidating. Apple, one of the only ones positive, up 1.3% on the week. Meta down percent. And Apple, the biggest loser, down 7.5% and well below all its short-term, long-term moving average and below all its weekly moving averages. All right, going on to the watch list. All right, so this week took out a lot of names if they were extended. Again, Duolingo looks excellent. Just took it out. Wanted to keep it more to actionable names. And again, want dynamic stocks. Want the liquid leaders. Stocks showing strong triple-digit growth ahead. Stocks with abnormally large relative strength and stocks that displayed strong post-earnings gaps or monster earnings gaps or strong gaps in general. So really want to keep it to lists of stocks now that are more actionable in the current time or consolidating. Shopify being one of them. After this double bottom base breakout, a couple tests of the 20-day moving average, and then on Friday, another successful test of the 20-day moving 21 EMA. Don added to this position for GROTECTION on the pullback buy setup. So it looks very actionable and very strong. Again, Duolingo, very extended, but extremely strong. Netflix extended. Boeing down 1.6%. Again, new stage 2 Weinstein style uptrend after breaking out of this nice double bottom base, staying very close to the 80 MA. And that's what we're watching for. This pink line is the 8 exponential moving average, and we want to see our leaders stay very close, if not above that 8, and just ride and surf along that 8. Kratos Defense very close here as it retests again its pivot point after backing off a little bit, getting close to the round trip. However, has been able to bounce back and looks potentially actionable next week if the breakout continues. IBN, several tight weeks here. GEV, definitely the liquid leader, up 1.2% on Friday on the Trump executive orders. Again, this is definitely the leader in the power generation. They are the leading manufacturer of natural gas turbines. They also own nuclear and manufacture nuclear assets through their Hitachi division. So they are integrated across the board in all forms of power generation, including nuclear. And again, this broke out to all-time highs last week, and it's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight up weeks. And you can see relative strength just climbing very nicely here. CEG is another natural gas power producer. Looking great. Broke out of this little flag on Friday. Shelf. Big volume, nice pocket pivot. Oklo, one of the best performers on the week, up 30%. Again, after an earnings gap here and a nice flag shelf formation, beautiful breakout on the Trump announcement on huge volume. Also the biggest volume it's ever traded on a daily basis, Friday. Centrus Energy is a enriched uranium play, which was up 18%. And NuScale Power, which makes small nuclear module reactors, a beneficiary as well, up 25%. Again, these executive orders are really focusing on getting the permits and the building started within the next year and a half. So this is definitely a fast track. CrowdStrike with a breakout on Friday above this cup with handle / consolidation area here. Nice pocket pivot here with increase in volume out of this somewhat clean and simple base area. Rubrik extended, but the leader in cyber. Zscaler continues somewhat extended now. Okta has earnings on Tuesday night, so we'll be watching for that, right in the pivot zone. CyberArk also broke out of a 3-week tight area last week. Again, somewhat of a laggard in this group, but looks good. Dave is extended, shouldn't be on the list. Coupang trading tightly, and again, relative strength starting to climb into recent high areas and showing nice volume on the earnings breakout and continued strength. DoorDash is also an actionable name right now after this double bottom base breakout failed. Shakeout on the earnings. Quick recovery back into the pivot zone. Again, this is a name which has a lot of institutional sponsorship. In the IBD for last quarter, there were over $7 billion in new mutual fund buys for DoorDash. So this is also a liquid institutional large cap name. SE a little extended. Dycom was an earnings gap this week. This is a construction company that basically lays fiber cable and works for utilities as a contractor. And again, this is broken out of to all-time highs here. Toast. Earnings gap up here. Hit the profit-taking zone. Mild pullback. Up on big volume. Down on lighter volume. What you want to see. Riding close to the 80 MA. This name is potentially actionable as well. Credo is also a data center name. Again, hit very hard on the DeepSeek sell-off. Lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. Now higher low, higher high, and now nice little shelf formation heading into earnings in a week and a half. Notable about this, several upcoming quarters of triple-digit gains in earnings and sales. So this is why this is on my list, even though the chart is not perfect. Axon, a former leader, was able to break out last week and hold. Dutch Bros down about 8% on the week. Again, not a pretty base, but back above all its moving averages. Definitely a contender as they build out 198 new stores this year and building this low-level cup with handle. This is a name that GROTECTION is in. Shake Shack in the restaurant area. Again, strong post-earnings reaction. Ants well off its highs, but definitely one of the stronger looking restaurant names right now. NRG was an earnings gap the week before last. Up 26% on a monster earnings gap. One of the things we look out for, holding its high volume close of the earnings day, building a nice couple week tight action above that high volume close area. Again, this is a company that generates power. They're the largest generator of natural gas power in the United States. They also made a large acquisition of AS Power, which now doubles their power generation capacity. The acquisition is instantly accretive, and their main goal is to supply data centers in Texas as well as in the Northeast with the additional power needed to run AI. So this is a name to keep an eye on. Tesla down 3% on the week. Again, nice little flag formation here. We'll look to add on a breakout through the flag. Intuit, stage 1 breakout this week on earnings. Nice 8% gap up and closed in the pivot zone. Robinhood, up 2% on the week. Again, found resistance up here at this 66.91 area, reversed off of that area. Again, we've talked about how it would be perfectly normal for these things to build maybe a little handle or flag formation before resurging through the highs. Robinhood is definitely one of the early leaders out of our follow-through day. And LPL Financial, again, backed off a little bit after a breakout attempt last week. Very strong earnings and sales numbers ahead. And FUTU Chinese brokerage earnings next week, so we'll be watching that with this base on base pattern. Vistra, also a power generator. Again, nice and tight VCP pattern here. Trying to break through this as also a beneficiary of the AI data center and increasing power needs. Palantir backed off about 4.7% on lighter volume this week. Again, another liquid leader kind of handling out from this big cup with handle breakout, pulling back, hanging close to the 80 MA and above the 21-day moving average. CoreWeave, this is not actionable, but again, monster new IPO. NVDA initially owned 5% of this company, had put 100 million into them, and then recently added another 250 million post IPO. Currently, NVIDIA sells about 8% of all their brand new chips to CoreWeave. So they're a big partner of CoreWeave, and they receive preferential treatment from NVIDIA. They have advanced AI networks. They're also somewhat of a hyperscaler, and they rent out NVIDIA's accelerator-equipped servers that crunch artificial intelligence workloads. These accelerators speed up processing of software algorithms. So again, this is definitely a name NVIDIA is huge partners with. So that's why I'm bringing it up and continuing to have it on the list. Snowflake with a nice earnings reaction here and the start of an ants formation. This is a Dave Ryan indicator, up 13%, but gave a little bit back on Friday, but was able to break through this prior base that it undercut as the market got weak post DeepSeek, but resurged here, and earnings were good across the board. All of their businesses were up at least 25%, and their backlog grew by 36%. So it was a pretty nice quarter. Nutanix also with earnings coming up this week. This is a cloud enterprise software company, very close to all-time highs. Shop shouldn't be on this list. Nebus, this is a hyperscaler, and this had a positive earnings reaction coming up the right side, a little bit sloppy. Net also coming up the right side. Airgain broke out. This is a engineering and construction company that builds data centers and utility plants. So this is definitely a beneficiary of the whole data center build out and the electric build out. Nasdaq as well, building this big cup with handle, relative strength making new highs. Avgo with earnings the week after next, NVDA with earnings next week. This has been the first semiconductor to really get back and hold up well here. 2-week tight right now. A-Lab, this is another name that got killed with DeepSeek. Again, just starting to come back above the 200-day moving average, all moving average starting to slope up. The 20-day now coming up through the 200-day. Positive post-earnings reaction. Again, this is on the list. Triple-digit sales and earnings, slowing down a little bit, but new products that help operate and connect the data center. CLS is a contract manufacturer. Todd Zilla bought a position in this right through this little shelf breakout, and then there was some nice follow through on the week here, so that's looking good. I like the relative strength on this, and I like the way it's come back also. Johnson Controls, tight. This is another name Todd Zilla owns. Bought this post-earnings recovery of the high volume close. It's kind of vacillated up and down through it, but trading nice and tight. This is an Oregon company that basically has a proprietary blood warming system that keeps the organs alive as they are transferred to the site for the transplant. And this is a company that seems to have almost a monopoly now on this business. But you can see very strong post-earnings reaction, very tight. Definitely like this name. All right, IONQ in the quantum area, several quantum names had a big week. Seagate Technology. This is a company that's got some nice growth ahead. Just nice, it's had somewhat of a V bottom, but continued post-earnings, and it's just shown a lot of strength. Look at the relative strength line just exploding higher here. Several price target upgrades and upgrades last week. Again, some big institutional buying in the IBD fund for last quarter and getting close. I suspect this is going to need to probably consolidate, or if it does happen to hit highs, back off and build somewhat of a handle with this V formation. Uber backed off 4%, struggling after Tesla announcing the robo-taxi launch in Texas. Elon Musk does not see a need for Uber and had some comments against them. Stock still holding up relatively well above the pivot, so we're still in this name. Lyft also had a nice earnings gap 2 weeks ago and a nice tight 4% drop on the week, still holding and handling out this new cup with handle base. This is an actionable idea right now. EQT, largest producer of natural gas in the United States. Again, just sitting very tightly up here, tried to break out. Strong growth ahead. You can see well above the 25% that Can Slim likes to see, some triple digit earnings quarters ahead, and just trading in a nice 23% consolidation. Again, we can see the resistance in this going back here, and we can see a breakout above this area. Blue skies ahead. And that high is 57.37. I've got alerts set on this. Carvana is another name that's recovered and held up beautifully, trading in a very nice VCP pattern here. Volume drying up and closed out basically at the highs of the week here on a tight 1.4% up. So kind of a 2-week tight here. Oddity, nice recovery from their CEO dumping 5.5 million shares. Again, that was a secondary offering. That was almost 10% of their float that he dumped, and the stocks absorbed it. So you can see this nice breakout above that IPO high, holding nicely there. Range Resources, another natural gas name. AR, another natural gas game, and Comstock. Urban Outfitters with a huge earnings gap. Strong numbers at Anthropology, a 22% monster gap up that closed out the week very well on big volume. Gap has earnings next week, looking strong heading into earnings. CCJ, uranium miner, up 14%. Nice breakout through this low cup with handle pivot. A name we're watching closely. It's too low of a price. APH. Train in the data center cooling area. Comfort Systems, also in the data center cooling center. And then AppLovin, again, not the prettiest chart here. This could be a climax top, but it has been able to try to get back above this post DeepSeek level. Had a nice earnings gap. So again, definitely not the leader anymore, but possibly resurging itself. Hammer Sports, the maker of Wilson bats, as well as softball equipment, DeMarini bats, Solomon footwear, several high-end brands of ski equipment, huge quarter. Monster beat, 19% gap, nice shakeout on Friday below that earnings gap, closed right up there toward the high, showing nice rubber ball bounce on Friday. So this is a name we'll be watching. Tempus AI, not making any money yet, but a huge player in the new AI medical area where they do everything from analyze patient charts to look at ultrasounds and images to make diagnosis. This was a Nancy Pelosi buy back here. Huge run. Then this double bottom base. Again, a little wild here, but we'll want to see some tightening action back up above this double bottom base pivot area. ONON back up to almost its recent highs on earnings the week before last. And that is it for the week. Again, hope everybody has a wonderful Memorial weekend. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Revere Asset. Also, please follow, and we appreciate your likes on X. My handle is at ToddMichael70. My email is todd@revereasset.com. And if you'd like to become a client, please feel free to call 855-REAL-WEALTH and ask to speak with Don or Dan. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week.